Dragon's Dogma as a whole isn't usually thought about as a horror game, since we as the Arisen can take down just about any foe that comes our way, and even more so if pawns are in tow. This feeling of power can also distract us from just how horrifying of a setting we're really in though. And for Halloween, I wanted to explore just how terrifying the world of Dragon's Dogma can be. And I'm going to be doing this from the perspective of two regular humans, one man and one woman. We'll see what the world is like for them living in it, go over the most terrifying monster threats, and finally, I want to discuss how humanity could have survived those monsters to begin with. The unsung hero might shock you. So let us begin. Section 1. What would living in the world be like? Firstly, I want to go over who our subjects will be. This is Holly and Jaffetto. They live within the safety of Vernworth's walls. They run a small business out of a stand in the middle of the market, selling any type of meat they can catch or plants they can forage. But this means they must travel outside the walls, lest they run out of stock. Jaffetto usually does this during the day and returns before nightfall, but the animals have started to avoid the city, leading Jaffetto to have to venture further away, and risking being caught out in the darkness. But this is normal life for common folk in Vernworth. You can't hope to make it here without taking risks, but sometimes the risks you take don't pay off. Jaffetto hasn't returned, and the sun is beginning to set. Holly grabs her bow without a second thought, and begins on her way to find her husband. As we can see from this, the world of Dragon's Dogma is quite unforgiving. As the Arisen, it is almost guaranteed that we come across all manner of items to sell, making gold all but an afterthought. But not for the common folk of Vernworth, and that's to say nothing of the beasts that prowl the land. Section 2. Horrific Monsters. As Holly leaves the lit streets of Vernworth, she pulls out her lantern. She's terrified of the dark, and never leaves home without it. And while there may still be some slivers of sunlight coming from the west, she knows it won't be long until the green land laid out before her turns to darkened mystery. And in a hurry, she begins to follow the path Jaffetto had described, over the main bridge on the east side of the city, and continue on the path until you cross the second wooden bridge. Make a left and keep going until you reach the rocky coast with the ruined houses. She remembered every direction, but Jaffetto had written it down anyways. As she travels along the path, she hears laughing. Goblins. An entire horde. More than Holly can handle alone. She pulls out her bow, just in case, quiets her breath, and waits. Thankfully, the goblins look like they already finished off whatever lay bloody before them. Holly's heart sank as she rushed to check the body. She doesn't recognize them. Relief washes over her just as strongly as the fear had. And here is where we meet the most common threat to humanity. It isn't the large monsters that pose the biggest danger, but the small ones. Wolves, goblins, harpies, and saurians are going to be the biggest problem. Their relative size to humans mean they most likely hunt the same animals, walk the same paths, and they most likely see humans as easy prey. And as anyone who has ridden an ox cart knows, these monsters aren't afraid to take normal humans on. Only when the Arisen is aboard do these ox carts have proper protection. But let's continue. Holly reaches the abandoned buildings. This area reminds her of some farmers that came here looking for their missing daughter. They never did find her. They were convinced to stop looking by some of the other settlers. Said she was taken by an ogre, and it's probably too late. But that wouldn't happen to Jaffetto. Ogres only want women, right? And just as Holly could finish that sentence, she saw a lantern. She rushed to it and found something that made her drop to her knees. A barely breathing Geppetto. She sobs in relief. But Geppetto doesn't look relieved at all. The expression on his face is one of horror. He can barely get a single word out through the pain. Behind. Holly turns around to the pleased grimace of an ogre. It remembered this place, made it its hunting grounds. Holly and Geppetto's shop was later sold to a new merchant. He sold leather goods and some farm tools. And that concludes the story segments for this video. I hope that painted the picture of just how terrifying life can be in Dragon's Dogma. Ogres are large, ravenous beasts. No mere human could ever hope to match their pure strength. These monsters actively hunt down humans as well, and are one of the most horrifying creatures you could come across. They easily destroy ox carts and take down any escorts with them. Cyclopi are also very large and powerful, but don't have the same agility as an ogre. And I can see a good ox cart running from them. It's a miracle any carts can make it back with a beast like the ogre out there. But let's move on to the others. I think the presence of the undead, and more specifically zombies, are quite a scary addition to the world as well. Hordes of flesh-consuming monsters prowling the darkness. And that's to say nothing of the misty marshes. A land filled with them, shrouded in a fog so thick you wouldn't even see them coming. Get lost in here and the last thing you'll ever hear is your own screams. Next we have the flying threat, the one and only griffin. With incredible eyesight and the ability to soar large distances, there isn't a place you could hide from the griffin that would keep you alive. The one saving grace you could hope for would be the presence of larger prey nearby, like that of the oxen, a favorite of the griffin. And the monster that I think poses the largest threat to humanity isn't even a monster at all, but the unassuming pawns you have in your party right now. Every day, hundreds of pawns travel between worlds via the rift, and risk the transmitting of the dragon's plague. And if that happens, the pawn will eventually become an unstoppable killing machine, wiping out more life than any monster could hope to alone. Think about that the next time you and your pawns are fighting a cyclops. And there are many more horrific monsters, but these are my picks for which ones would be the most horrific to live alongside. Section 3. How humanity has survived. Humanity in Dragon's Dogma is pretty well off considering their circumstances. But how did they get here? How did they survive every monster we've talked about until now? Well, there are a few ways, and actually the first one mirrors real life pretty well. Firstly, I'd suspect that a lot of cave dwelling was done to protect humans from large monsters. They wouldn't be able to reach them inside, and they'd be sheltered from the weather. Secondly, we have to acknowledge just how much more powerful humans can be in this world. Clearly, not all people are as strong as the Arisen, but we can see some who come close. Such as Ragnar, every non-Arisen maester, and some soldiers. I mean, Sir Gregor and a few men held off a Dullahan by themselves, so we need to give them some credit. Although there's something I think had a bigger impact on humanity's ability to survive. Was it magic? Or maybe some long-lost technology? No. The reason I believe humanity could survive this cruel world is the simple oxen. These strong and resilient creatures would have helped in many ways, such as carrying and pulling cargo, building materials, and people, serve as common livestock, and they are big enough to fend off small creatures if need be, making them extremely reliable animals to have by humanity's side. This is actually not too different than the role horses played in human history. Although it's not to say that humans would have died out without oxen, it is a testament to how much they contributed. And now we come to the end. I hope this video was a little spooky. I wanted to fit the theme this month with this one, and I think it's a perfect way to talk about some of the horrifying things of Dragon's Dogma. Let me know what you think is scary or any other spooky Dragon's Dogma stories in the comments, and I'll see you next time.
Boo boo.
Boo boo. Sounds like shit. Boo boo.